The war started.
It began on September 1, 1939 in Europe, where the vast majority of countries in the world participated or were affected by it, including the great powers in two warring military alliances, the Allied forces and the Axis powers. It is also the largest war in history, and more than 100 people participated directly in it. Million people from more than 30 countries. World War II led to a large number of civilian deaths. Aircraft played a major role in the conflict, enabling the strategic bombing of population centers that killed about 1 million people, including the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
After the outbreak of war,
the Japanese Empire declared war on the Republic of China on July 7, 1937. It aimed to control Asia and the Pacific, but the actual beginning of the war is considered to be on September 1, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, after which there were successive declarations of war on Germany by France and the United Kingdom. From late 1939 to early 1941, Nazi Germany took control of a large area of the European continent after a series of military campaigns, and formed an alliance of the Axis powers with Italy and Japan. It also agreed with the Soviet Union to share the lands neighboring them, Poland, Finland, Romania, and other countries. Baltic. The main battle in the war remained between the Axis powers on the one hand, and the United Kingdom alongside the Commonwealth countries on the other hand, in addition to a campaign in North Africa and another campaign in East Africa, in addition to the Berlin Air Battle, the bombing of London, the Balkan Campaign, and the Battle of the Atlantic. In June 1941, the Axis powers coalition invaded the Soviet Union in what is known as Operation Barbarossa, which led to the ignition of the Eastern Front, the largest theater of war in history, making the largest Axis power in a war of attrition, and in December 1941 Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. It also attacked the British Pacific region of Malaya, quickly taking control of much of the Western Pacific. Post-war, the advance of the Axis powers stopped in 1942, when Japan lost in the Battle of Midway near the U.S. state of Hawaii. Germany also lost in the Second Battle of El Alamein in North Africa, and the Soviet Union defeated it decisively in the Battle of Stalingrad, and in 1943, Germany suffered a series of defeats on the Eastern Front. The Allies also invaded Sicily and invaded Italy, which led to Italy's surrender, in addition to the Allied victories in the Pacific Ocean. The Axis powers lost the initiative and began a strategic decline on all fronts. In 1944, the Allies liberated France in what is known as the Norman Landings, while the Soviet Union regained all the territories it had lost and invaded Germany and its allies. In 1944 and 1945, Japan retreated in south-central China and in the Burma Campaign, while the Allies paralyzed the Imperial Japanese Navy and took control of major islands in the Pacific Ocean.
Historical background.
World War I brought about a fundamental change in the political map in Europe, with the defeat of the Central Powers, namely, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire. Germany, the Ottoman Empire, in addition to the October Revolution carried out by the Bolsheviks in Russia, which led to the establishment of the Soviet Union. The League of Nations was established during the Paris Peace Conference of 1919 to prevent a new world war, through the method of common security, the cessation of naval armaments through the Washington Naval Treaty, and the cessation of international disputes through peace talks and mediation. The German Empire was dissolved after the German Revolution of 1918 to 1919, and a democratic government, later known as the Weimar Republic, was established. Adolf Hitler led a failed coup against power in Germany in 1923, but he later became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, abolished the democratic system, supported a review of the world order, and shortly thereafter signed huge arms treaties, while France sought to maintain its alliance with Italy through the signing of the Franco-Italian Agreement, one of whose clauses stipulated that France would not object to Italy's occupation of Ethiopia, and the situation worsened at the beginning of 1935 when Germany annexed the Saar region to it. Hitler challenged the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Locarno by remilitarizing the Rhineland in 1936, and weak responses came from European countries. When the Spanish Civil War broke out in July, Hitler and Mussolini supported the nationalist forces against the Spanish Republican Party supported by the Soviet Union. The two sides took advantage of this conflict to test new weapons and methods of war, and the nationalist forces won the war later. In October 1936, Germany and Italy formed the Rome-Berlin Axis. A month later, Germany and Japan signed the Anti-Communist Pact, which Italy joined the following year. In China, after the Xi'an incident, the Kuomintang and the communist forces agreed to a ceasefire in order to form a united front to confront Japan.
One of the most important reasons for the outbreak of war.
The Allies imposed unfair treaties on the countries defeated in World War I, especially Germany. Under these treaties, Germany lost 12.5% of its area, 12% of its population, about 15% of its agricultural production, 10% of its industry, and 74% of its iron ore production. It stipulated that it would not the German army exceeded 100,000 soldiers, and large reparations were paid to the Allies. The beginning of the economic crisis in 1929, which led to dictatorial regimes coming to power in some countries, and the preoccupation of many countries in dealing with their economic crises made them reduce the importance of what was happening at the international level. The failure of the Geneva Conference on Disarmament and to reduce the danger of the arms race, and Germany's withdrawal from the League of Nations in 1933 as an expression of its adherence to the legitimacy of its demand to rebuild its military power and to cancel the unjust provisions of the Versailles Treaty against it. After Hitler came to power, he set out to get rid of the restrictions of the Versailles Treaty by imposing forced conscription, developing the military industry, arming the Rhine region, and reclaiming the Saar Basin. The occupation and invasion of Manchuria province, located in northeastern China, by Japan in 1931 without any decisive reaction from the international organization. The occupation of Ethiopia by Italy in 1935 and 1936 and the failure of the economic sanctions imposed on it after Germany and Japan withdrew from the League of Nations and France refrained from implementing those sanctions. German expansion at the expense of Austria and Poland, and its occupation of the Sudetenland and most of Czechoslovakia within the framework of what was known as the Lebensraum. Fascist regimes concluded military alliances, the most prominent of which was the Berlin-Rome-Tokyo axis. Germany and Italy enter the Spanish Civil War, which leads to a neo-fascist regime.
Pre-war events.
Invasion of Ethiopia.
Invasion of Ethiopia, 1935. Italy invaded Ethiopia between October 1935 and May 1936, resulting in the annexation of Ethiopia to the Italian colonies in Italian East Africa.
Spanish Civil War 1936–1939.
Germany and Italy provided military support to the nationalist rebellion in Spain, while the Soviet Union supported the existing government, which had leftist tendencies. Italy's support for the rebels was greater than that of the Nazis. Mussolini sent the nationalists with 660 planes, 150 tanks, 800 artillery pieces, 10,000 machine guns and 240,000 rifles, plus CTV and the Air Corps to support their cause. At the height of the war, I provided them with 50,000 men. While the Soviet Union supported the government of the Spanish Republic, more than 30,000 foreign volunteers known as the International Brigades fought against the nationalists. Both Germany and the Soviet Union used this proxy war as an opportunity to test their more advanced weapons and tactics in combat. The bombing of Guernica by the German Condor Legion in April 1937 also raised widespread fears that the next major war would involve large-scale attacks against civilians.
Japanese invasion of China 1937.
In July 1937, Japan took advantage of the Marco Polo Bridge incident to invade China, so the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact with China to provide military support, which ended the cooperation that had existed between China and Germany. While Commander Chiang Kai-shek sent the elite of the National Revolutionary Army to defend Shanghai, but the city fell within 3 months, and Japanese forces continued their advance and captured Nanjing, the country's capital at that time, and committed the Nanjing Massacre.
Japanese invasion of the Soviet Union and Mongolia 1938.
On July 29, 1938, Japanese forces invaded the Soviet Union and the first battle took place in which the Soviets won. However, Japan refused to acknowledge this and decided on May 11, 1939 to move the Mongolian border to the Geol River, where the Battle of Khakan-Geol took place, in which the Red Army defeated the Guandong Army, which led to the Japanese forming a conviction not to attack the Soviet Union so as not to interfere in the Chinese War, and it turned its attention southward towards the European colonies in the Pacific Ocean.
Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
In August 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression pact with a secret protocol. The agreement included the right of each party to take spheres of influence, Western Poland and Lithuania to Germany, Eastern Poland, Finland, Estonia, Latvia and Bessarabia to the Union Soviet. He also raised the issue of Poland's independence, which was guaranteed by France and Britain under the agreement signed. The agreement was important to Hitler because it ensured that the Soviet Union would not intervene after its invasion of Poland.
End of war.
The war in Europe ended with the Allied invasion of Germany, the Soviet Union's control of Berlin, and Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945. The Potsdam Conference was then held near Berlin, during which the Potsdam Declaration was issued on June 26, 1945, and the United States rose on August 6 and August 9. From 1945, with the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, respectively, followed by Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945. Not everyone agreed on a specific date for the end of the war. The tendency was more that the war ended in the armistice of August 14, 1945, which was the day of victory over Japan, and not the day on which Japan announced its surrender, September 2, 1945. A peace treaty was signed with Japan in 1951 to discuss all remaining details, such as paying compensation to prisoners who were assaulted. However, the last Japanese soldier, Hiro Onoda, did not surrender until 1974. After that, a peace treaty was concluded for the final stability of Germany, which paved the way for the reunification of Germany in 1990, and thus all the problems that followed World War II were solved.